Thank you. Happy to be here.
Tell us about the essence of this summit.
Well, I think it really, as you say, it's a meeting of over 40 heads of state from Africa and obviously a number of senior officials, including the Prime Minister of India. The Prime Minister of India yesterday said it's the meeting of representatives of 1/3 of the global population. And I think that reflects the dynamic and the critical importance of an engagement like this here. And so a number of strategic announcements came out of this initiative here. One was massive and significant influence in terms of the role of Africa and India for a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. There's also lots of engagement between business in terms of deepening this commercial engagement between India and Africa and trying to increase the trade and investment flows between both economies. It comes at an opportune time, and Delhi came to an absolute standstill yesterday. In fact, there were gridlock traffic for over 5 to 6 hours, and I think it reflects the strategic importance that India places towards Africa. And I say it's opportune because India is the only BRICS economy that's firing at the right space at the moment. And that means that this relationship is ready to take off. We now have bilateral trade between India and Africa at about $70 billion. India has invested over $30 billion into Africa. And so this is really the kickstart in terms of the second wave of Indian investment into Africa.
These bilateral relations, especially commercially, have existed before. South Africa and India have had bilateral relations before, and we never had this kind of engagement. What has been halting and rather serving as a deterrent towards the success of these relations?
Well, I think we've seen a massive increase. I mean, bilateral trade between India and Africa was around $2 billion about 14 years ago. And so it's increased over 35 times. But now we're going to see a significant impetus because if you look at what's happening in terms of commercial engagement, we see a slowdown in terms of Europe. We see a continued slowdown in Brazil, in Russia, in China. And so India is really the only economy at the moment from the large BRICS economies that is going to see a significant increase in terms of growth over the next 3 to 5 years. And this will have a significant influence in terms of the commercial coupling between India and Africa. But beyond that, there was a number of soft diplomacy initiatives announced by India, including a $10 billion currency line that was put together, a credit agreement that was advanced towards Africa. There was an announcement in terms of 50,000 scholarships that were put forward by the Indian government for African students to go and study in India. And I think perhaps most importantly, we're starting to see specific sectoral engagements. So there's lots of discussion around how do we utilize India's competitiveness and expertise in the IT, ICT sector to be able to utilize that expertise for development and growth into Africa. Quite a bit of discussion in terms of agriculture and the health sector, and how do we utilize some of the expertise that India has learned over the last few years in the healthcare sector. And so, as I said, it's 1/3 of the global population meeting in Delhi, and so the decisions that are taken there will have a long-term bearing in terms of the political engagement between 2.5 billion people between India and Africa, but also this commercial relationship between both economies.
How is it going to differ then? Because India and South Africa are both members of BRICS. And on the other hand, if we are going to have, say, for example, South Africa-China, South Africa-Japan relations, how is this going to set aside these unique relationships? Are we going to end up seeing them operating in silos and having a collective approach when they come to BRICS?
Well, I think, there was lots of discussion in terms of the South Africa-India relationship, and obviously that's a very warm relationship. We share a common citizen in Mahatma Gandhi. We've got a common colonial past. We've got a very close relationship between the governments. We've got a sizable Indian diaspora that's resident here in South Africa and has become quite influential here in South Africa. But we've also seen bilateral trade between India and South Africa moving beyond $10 billion. And the BRICS commercial coupling is really an opportunity to enhance what's happening bilaterally between South Africa and India. And so I think this was really a movement beyond just BRICS, but really pivoting it from a continental perspective. There were 54 representatives from all 54 countries in Africa, and on the sidelines of that the India-Africa summit, there were lots of bilateral personal engagements between the Indian government and Africa. I think the devil's in the detail. It's what happens from here, and do we start to see more closer alignment between Mauritius and India, or Kenya, or Tanzania and India? And I think we will. I think what excites me the most is what we call innovation. It's Indian innovation that's aimed at base of the pyramid communities, 4 billion people across the world who live below $1.50 a day. And the Indian firms have developed a specific competence in terms of opportunities that are leveled and pivoted towards individuals who live below $1.50 a day. But I think there's been lots of discussion and discourse and narrative in terms of India's engagement into Africa. We've got to look the other way around. What are the opportunities for African businesses into India? This is an economy that over the next 10 years will spend $1.8 trillion in infrastructure. That provides massive opportunity for construction infrastructure companies from here.
I think you got it spot on to say what happens from now on, and surely we have to see as it develops.
100% agree with you.
Thank you very much for talking to us. We are speaking here to Abdullah Verachia, who is a lecturer and head of the India-Africa Business Network at GIBS. Well, on a different note now, analysts say that some relief is in store for motorists when the fuel price for November is announced later today. I think anytime from now on, we'll hear about petrol being expected to drop by around 18 cents a litre and diesel by 8 cents a litre, and as well as illuminating paraffin by 3 cents. A slight moderation in the international oil price coupled with a marginal strengthening of the rand in the past couple of weeks are said to be the reasons why a small drop in the fuel price is now on the cards.